Make it sound so bad.
No, it's good.
See, they got your number.
I'm telling you. I'm not saying.
They got your number.
You're a traveling man.
Is anybody home?
That's right.
Is anybody home?
Yes, everybody's home.
We're here.
Okay.
Wait a minute. We're live. Are we?
No, man, can't be.
Yes, it's 8:01.
Is anybody home?
Yes, we are
we're
here.
Hey, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of Mek We Chat. I haven't seen the lady, but the man's there, Jerry.
The man's there.
Oh, so we're ready. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, folks, it's time for another edition of Mek We Chat, a Thursday evening, the 6th day of June. Today is significant internationally. I'm not so sure about the reason, but today is called D-Day. In the bigger capitals of the world. It was the day that that the world beat back the Nazis in what was the biggest war, World War II, that we have had so far. For most people in the Caribbean, that means nothing, although many of our own people were parts of that war, and but we don't pay attention to those things. But this evening we have Dwyer from St. Kitts, George at the controls, Margaret in New York, and Catherine there in London. We have not seen signs yet. Oh, I'm not calling any name.
Actually, she just popped up for half a second and
she just
took
popped
off.
up and disappeared again.
Oh, okay. I see pop-up shop tonight.
Yeah. She did that. She popped
But
and
folks,
disappeared.
as usual, tonight we have a menu of stuff that we want to look at, and there are many things that we can. She appears.
I'm back.
She appears.
Speaking about menu, sir.
And George is what? Fries and what, George?
French fries and Coke.
Oh my goodness.
All the stuff that's not good for him, right?
Yeah, never mind.
I know.
Never mind.
Yeah.
And
mm-hmm.
I happen to know that George has kitchen skills, so I can't imagine what that is serving up himself.
Well, people tell me who cook for themselves that it's not the same when you have to cook for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this is. So maybe George is suffering from that.
I don't know what I'm suffering from, but right now I'm damn hungry.
But you're eating. That's what matters, right? You are eating.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi there.
How you doing, girl?
Not too bad, not too good.
Not too bad, not too good.
No.
Well, take a look at the guy just upstairs over you, boy. He's as serious as anything. He ain't doing too good either. Dwyer, how are you, sir?
I'm great. I am great.
All right. Good to see you guys. Good to see you.
Great.
So,
Did
Madam Producer?
Say, yes.
Take it away.
I did hear someone say menu just before I came on.
Mm-hmm.
So, folks, I sneaked in a little bit late this evening. I was doing some of what George was doing, but I didn't want to do it on air. Not the same menu though, but the same thing. So I think I have a little bit of fuel to go for the next couple of hours. And over the next couple of hours, we want to look at, there's a little calypso we want to talk about, There's a message in it. I like it bad. And if the rest of the suspects don't like it, we're still going to talk about it. It's called Yaad Bwoy. And George has it. I shared it with everyone because, we have this little thing to sort out. Because when George plays those things on air, we don't hear. So we look at it before. So we're going to look at Yaad Bwoy tonight. We're going to look at the message in it and how we can prevent ourselves from being a Yaad Bwoy. All right, so that's on the menu for tonight. We also want to look at the...
Hold on, you have your
Sexual
Never hear
discrimination.
about a Yaad girl yet.
well, I
Company?
check in.
I want to know if you want to get in a gender debate tonight.
Yes. Yeah, boy and a girl. Right.
You see, because in my vocabulary, there are some terms which are generic. Man is man, woman is woman. And there is a mankind, which covers everyone. Never heard of a womankind for my barn. I hear of mankind. And that covers the whole of it, everybody. So when we talk about Yaad Bwoy, that is universal.
Yeah, kind. Okay.
It is Yaad kind. So just like when you say Yaad fowl, you're neither talking about hen nor rooster. It's just Yaad fowl. Right. So,
you win. I give up. You win that one.
Good. I don't get into gender debate, you see? I think it's too much energy being expended that could be used elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we want to look at the election campaign in Dominica, take a little look at it. And you know, Atherton did report last week that he had internet issues. He couldn't get on to join us. I'm really hoping he could get on tonight because some of the things we're hearing on the campaign trail in Dominica, I'm sure he could better explain and give us a hands-on feel of what is happening there. But if he doesn't get on, we'll do our best to share some of the things that are happening on the campaign trail. And you know something, it will tie right into that calypso we're going to look at. Yeah, so we have those two issues. We have universal health coverage in Grenada. We're actually supposed to have a guest to discuss this issue. Is our guest going to be on, George?
Yes, he said he would be here. I'm a little bit surprised that he's not here yet, but it's still early.
Okay, he's going to be in studio or on Zoom?
Electronically.
Okay, so we look out for him and we would certainly love to have him join us, as I think he's been intricately involved in this whole quest for universal healthcare in Grenada.
Very knowledgeable about the matter.
Right, so those are the things we have on the menu, and the other item, other two items, and I'm really hoping, guys, we can get through all of them this evening. We want to look at the latest development with LIAT. Maybe we don't have to spend too much time on that one.
No, definitely.
And we also want to look at the new requirements when you're going to get your visa to the United States. A few weeks ago, maybe it was about 2 weeks ago, we talked about the possibility of OECS countries losing the visa-free access to the Schengen area because of this mismanaged CBI program. And now we are going to look at some new requirements that the United States of America has laid down for people who want to get a visa to visit their country. So there you have it. I hope the memory is good, suspecting cheap, because that's the menu. And
I suspect we could start with the US visa requirement. That should be easy to dispense of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is clear that the Trump administration in particular has been trying to get a grasp on the whole question of immigration. They took the matter to the court and had some pushback on it, but they are finding other ways to achieve the same objectives, clearly. And so one of the new moves is the move towards having everybody who comes and makes a visa application, except a few people, that they also have to tell them what social media platforms they have used in the last 5 years and give them the name, and also what email addresses they have had in that 5-year period. So basically, when you read the thing, it basically says, listen, don't play any games with us, just tell us. That's the tone of the document that I read. And there might be some people who might be crying now because a lot of people think on the question of social media that because there's some people with several accounts. Some accounts are for them to do their mischief, other accounts are for whatever it is. But the one thing they don't realize that they can all be traced back if you have the right resources. And so the US State Department and people like that will have the resources to do that. So I would say to people, don't go playing games. Just give it up. But it shows that the world today is becoming, what must I call it? There's much more control that can be exercised in so many different areas, whereas in the past, none of this was possible. And all of these signal to us where we are slowly heading into George Orwell's 1984. And no, 1984. Big Brother's watching me.
Oh,
yes,
that
yeah,
one.
Right. That one. And maybe too many people have taken it for granted and don't understand it. But what they can do is go back, look at what you have been involved in from your social media, know whom you have been involved with. Sometimes it's not so much the what that they're concerned about, it's the whom have you been in contact with. And that's one of the big things. So I know some people already have said to me, boy, I ain't think I go it. Don't know why they would take that view, but maybe they do have something behind. But that's an additional hurdle that has been placed in the way of persons wanting to get a US visa. Will Canada do the same thing? Interesting question, but again, we have to wait to see what happens with that too.
It also brings to my mind this sense of this.
Ati is here.
Great. It also brings. Welcome, Ati, and please to adjust your camera so that you can see more.
I could see enough that he's fully bearded.
So that we can see more of you and less of other stuff. Right. So it also brings to mind, this sense of entitlement that we have, that it is being whittled away more and more. You're not entitled to a US visa. So when we ask you for these requirements, just know that you have to provide it, because the visa is not yours, it's ours.
And I think that's a point that needs to be made, because a lot of people seem to feel that a US visa is a right. Not visa is a right.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, your own passport of the country whichever you belongs to the government. If they want to take it from you, they can take it.
Exactly.
Because it belongs to the government.
If you misuse it, they have a right to take it away.
They can take it to it.
Yeah. Yes. All right, and there is Mr. Kennedy Roberts.
So
welcome, Kennedy.
We have a full slate tonight, boy.
Oh yes. We're happy.
368 persons. Okay, good.
Good.
Yeah, folks. So the first item that we've looked at is the new requirement by the U.S. State Department that persons applying for a visa now have to tell them what social media platforms they are on, have been on, what email addresses they have used over the last 5 years. It's getting more and more intrusive. And telephone numbers, right. It's getting more and more intrusive, but I fear that's where the world is going to go. It's not, this is just one step in that direction.
Yeah. Anything you have to say about it, Dwyer? You may have had people come to you for assistance in getting stuff together for their visa.
I think this is the reality we face today. I don't see that there are many ways or any ways around this. The US, like every other country, has a right to secure itself. Whether you love them or not, they are a country into which a lot of people try to enter, some through visas, others otherwise, and they want to have control of the process. Now, we do live in an invasive world. No question, Jerry is correct, 1984. It just happens that Orwell maybe got it wrong by a couple of years. But the process that has brought us to where we are today certainly began manifesting itself by 1984. This is how prophetic George Orwell was.
Exactly.
And more countries are doing it. We are certainly more proactive in our intelligence and information gathering in the Caribbean. Maybe we are not as blatant as the US is about it, but we certainly are. We require more information and that sort of thing. Indeed, we are in a world situation where there's a mutuality in terms of the exchange of information. And being small, vulnerable economies and societies, we really have to be able to finesse the bigger countries, otherwise they could close us down in a heartbeat. So much as we like to speak about being sovereign, our sovereignty is a highly diluted drink. We have to work smartly and deftly with the global powers that be. Now, I think and hope the day will come, while we will never compromise security, both local and international. I am hoping that the day will come when there really is a new world order, and there doesn't have to be all of this. But as the world stands now, I really cannot fault the United States for wanting to have further particulars and individuals in order to be able to guarantee its people that it is doing full diligence insofar as screening people is concerned.
Yeah.
What bothers me, Dwyer, is I agree with you that we cannot fault the United States or any sovereign country for protecting its borders. But it seems that at the very time that countries like the US and European countries are tightening up their due diligence processes and their security arrangements, we are moving in the exact opposite direction. We are loosening up. When a country like Dominica, for example, can have 6 of the persons who have been given diplomatic passports and diplomatic positions end up being on the most wanted list of Interpol, end up being arrested and tried in the United States and in jail, NG lapsing. When you can have a person like Alison Madueke, former Minister of Petroleum from Nigeria, who was wanted by Interpol, wanted by her country, her local police security people found $53 million US dollars in cash in her home while she was out of country. And that person has a Dominica diplomatic passport. And when you have Francesco Corralo, who was appointed as our representative to the FAO and was wanted by Interpol and was on the verge of being arrested and flashed a Dominica diplomatic passport. And when you have all these things going on, when you have the foreign minister, Francine Barron, refusing to disclose the list of persons who have been granted diplomatic passports because it is better for the country not to know her exact words. So I am aware that we are in 2 different worlds. There's a world of countries seeking seriously to protect their borders from terror, from money laundering, and from criminality of various kinds. And then there's another group of countries into which we fall, which seems hell-bent on outdoing each other, reducing the cost of our passports, sending people overseas to sell our passports like it's bread and corned beef we're selling. And nobody can satisfy us or the international security people that we are doing even basic due diligence. So, yes, and that is probably why countries like the United States have to tighten up their border protection, because we are letting people in, we are giving people our passports, and we are allowing people ipso facto to travel, to apply for visas using Dominica passports, for example, or St. Kitts passports, and so on. So I can see why there would be it tightening up. But I believe we also have to accept that we are not doing anything to make our job easier for our citizens who wish to travel on legitimate business like medical, vacation, education.
Study.
So I think there's another side to that coin that we need to pay attention to.
But you notice what happened 2 weeks ago in Europe, where 2 people wrote to question whether the Schengen visa should be continued, because they claim that St. Kitts is at fault. Now I see the Prime Minister of St. Kitts.
Free access, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Free access to the Schengen area.
To the Schengen area, yeah. I see is it the Prime Minister or is it Mark Brantley? One of them making a big fuss about it and claiming that, that is not true, la, 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 la. But we were always headed in that direction. And no set of noise that is being made now, no set of anything is going to soften the blow. Right, Dwyer?
Well, again, you see, I hate to use this term, third world, but we in the third world have to get our acts together, eh?
Yeah.
I shared something, I think it was with Beverley today, a Nigerian guy at a conference, speaking about the trillions of dollars that are stolen out of Africa by African leaders every year and secreted into European bank accounts. Let's not forget that there is a cynicism factor here in which the European decision makers, you would never find those European parliamentarians calling to exercise any sanctions on Switzerland, which is the biggest money laundry in the world. But they're all part of the same thing. As far as they're concerned, all of the money must be there. Remember, the US EB-5 citizenship program is a very corrupt program, privatized, and this was done under Obama. So we all have our problems. Now, I take Afi's point. There are going to be weak spots, unfortunately, and those weak spots will be exploited. And the impact on countries like ours is far more severe than it would be on England or New Zealand or Canada or the United States. And this is why we have to be more careful. And if we are more careful, then we might be subjected to less stringent measures, although I don't believe so, because once you're going to have presidents like Trump in the Oval Office in the United States, people who come from countries and racial backgrounds that are not blue-eyed and blonde are going to have a harder time to get into the United States. Let's face that. But our obligation, if I may just end the point, our obligation is to ensure that our standards are strict and fair. And I cannot fault the United States for what they're doing, and I won't.
Right. Yeah,
Margaret?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think all the discussion about the security concerns are valid and should be taken into consideration. However, I think for many of us who are living here in the United States, we know that much of this is not driven by security concerns as much as it is driven by concerns over the browning of America.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the big issue. This country already has structures and mechanisms in place that can take care of vetting all the people who are security threats.
Can I make a point, Margaret?
Mm-hmm.
Many years ago in the United States Virgin Islands, the Virgin Islanders were getting upset with people from the former British colonies in the Eastern Caribbean who had come to the Virgin Islands and had done very well in business, in the professions and so. And the Virgin Islanders were complaining and saying, these people are coming from these other islands and taking up positions of ascendancy and we have to get strict on them. So the people from the down islands, our islands, went to the governor and said, you all want us out? We will go back home. We're going to sell our properties. We're going to take our money out of the banks and everything, and we're going home. The governor begged them, look, say it's only joke we're making, don't bother with that. That's just a small minority of people. Here's the point. The browning of America should be of secondary concern to us. What we in the third world need to do is to get our acts together.
That's right.
The Congo is one of the most naturally resourceful countries in the world. It is the poorest country in Africa. Why? African Congolese leaders and European and North American plunderers do what they do, they get wealthy, and they keep the Congo poor. If the countries of the third world got together, took ourselves and our economies and our people and our patrimonies more seriously, and ran our affairs better, the United States would be welcoming us because we will have money and power. We have resources, but we don't have the money that go with the resources. We have resources, but we don't have the power that go with the resources. We must get the power. And then the browning and all of those things will become secondary. Look how friendly America is with Saudi Arabia. It's all about the oil. They're not white.
No,
I think. Sorry, Margaret, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You had started the point, so I think you should.
No. So I get what Dwyer is saying, and I'm not disputing that either. But it is also about power, because with the browning of America, what happens is you see a certain demographic as being voting for a particular bloc, which puts you out. So it's still about, there's still the power dynamic there. Even with the browning, when you talk about the browning. So I'm talking about the browning within the political context of what it means for shifting the power base from one group to another group.
And the stuff that we really don't have control over. But I do feel, as Dwyer is saying, we have control over how we deal with our affairs. And we have been too slipshod. We have been too, let me tell you something.
We have been dishonest, Jerry. We have been dishonest.
There you go. Barbados has a former minister who is wearing ankle bracelets in the United States, There might be many more, because people have just simply used the position of powers that they've had in these little islands. And you could hear a prime minister saying, I run things here. Another one saying, I am the top dog. Another man say, I am the prime minister of every square inch. And they behave like that. They don't just say it. Their actions and everything they do behave like that. And so they feel the resources of the country also belongs to them. The problem is when they switch those resources and they go to US dollars, it becomes a completely different story. But we can run, I have always said, we could have run a CBI program with a greater degree of decency and not have the problems that we're having now. Plain and simple.
I agree.
When Dominica has, 6 people, Ati, who are 6 people who are the agents, right? They are given carte blanche. They go out, they can sell the passport for, or the passport for whatever they want, once they put in extra quantity into the treasury. What kind of situation is that? It leaves itself open for people to do what is wrong.
Right, and suspects, remember we said we're not spending a lot of time on these issues because we have a lot of issues. Right now we have to take a break, and Kennedy, although you are here to talk about universal health care, you are welcome to participate in this discussion. We'd love to hear from you.
Any part of it.
Right.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
I'm not seeing Kennedy or Affy, I'm taking your word that Kennedy and Affy are there, but I'm not seeing them.
They're there.
Really?
You have to shift your
No, go to your gallery view on your thing.
Yeah,
That's what I just did.
Yeah.
And you're still not seeing them?
No.
But they're here, don't worry.
Affy, you there?
I'm right here, bro. Right here.
You in Warsaw or Portsmouth?
I'm in neither. It's a big country,
Okay, I know that. You're big. You're much bigger than me. You're much bigger than me, brother. You're big.
Yeah, man.
Okay. So let's take a little break, and then when we get back, we're going to spend 5 minutes talking about LIAT, and then we're going to move on.
5 minutes? Okay.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company. Tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive. Motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary. Public liability. Professional indemnity. Directors liability. And wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Boy, they gonna fly with kite now. The wind picking up.
I'm coming. Karim, what you doing?
Fly my kite.
Yeah, but not here. You can't fly kite near power lines, boy.
Why not? The wind good.
Because mommy say kite threads conduct electricity.
Yeah, kite. He's right. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, you can cause power outages, or even worse, it can get shocked.
Come, let's go and fly them in the pasture.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kite threads conduct electricity. Do not fly kites near overhead power lines. This can lead to electric shocks and power outages. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, do not try to retrieve it. Release it and call GRENADA. Always fly kites in open areas. Keep your kites far away from roads. And remember, always clean up after yourself.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
All right, guys, we are back. And just before I turn it over to you guys, I want to pay some attention here to some of the comments that have been appearing on social media. Let's start at the bottom and walk our way back. Donna Joseph says, "Yes, Jerry, it's happening here in Grenada under this present administration, where the PM feels that every bit of Grenada's patrimony belongs to him. So he's selling left, right, and center. And we, the people, cannot see where the money for sales is going. But certain ministers getting rich overnight, while the citizens suffer for the lack of basic needs. Our health care system and infrastructure, and the death of agriculture and agro-processing." She says Afro-processing, but I'm sure she meant agro-processing. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm going to turn it back over to you guys right now.
Okay.
Who did?
Yes, well, we want to look at the latest situation with LIAT, the latest development with LIAT, Barbados taking a backseat. George has a clip, I think it may be about 5 minutes, with Prime Minister Mia Mottley stating her country's position now and the plans that they have as far as LIAT is concerned. So George, can we get that clip for the viewers and listeners, but not for us? We should have listened to it sometime throughout the day today.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I shan't be long, but within recent weeks, there's been considerable discussion with respect to LIAT, the regional airline, for us. And I promised that at an appropriate time I would speak to this honourable chamber and to the country with respect to it. As you are aware, sir, LIAT has had considerable challenges within recent times, and there have been a number of meetings with the shareholder governments with respect to LIAT. Barbados equally has entered an IMF program since the 1st of October 2018. And while it is fair to say, Mr. Speaker, that the crisis risks have abated, it is equally, and it is fair to say that Barbados is on the road. It is also equally fair to say that Barbados' journey is far from complete. It is against that background, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we have entered these discussions recognizing that wherever we could in the past, Barbados has made its contribution to LIAT and indeed to securing regional affordable air transport. Over the years, we have done so without murmur. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, Barbados moved from being a minor shareholder in LIAT prior to 2003 to one holding from 8.19% to where we are today at 49.4%. I should say that at one stage we held 51% in 2013. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we analyze where LIAT is today and what LIAT requires of its shareholder governments, it is clear to us that there are going to be serious challenges for us to proceed any further. Mr. Speaker, we cannot do what LIAT requires with the current structure that LIAT has today. Many are aware that LIAT has found it difficult with continuous losses to keep flowing and to keep its head above water. Indeed, many of the studies that have been done, many predating our existence as a government, make it absolutely clear that the current model which LIAT has within the 1974 Limited is not an attractive model, and that what is needed is significant restructuring, indeed a new model of governance, a new financial model, and a new operational model in order for it to be able to extract greater benefit and to provide the services which it does. We, Mr. Speaker, as a government, were persuaded by those studies and continue to be so. But we are not the only shareholder government. And there are others, no matter what we've said, or no matter how much we try to impress upon it, who believe that there are better and different ways in order to secure the viability of the airline. Mr. Speaker, sir, we accept that there is no unanimity on this issue, but we equally accept that if others want to try and to be able to do it through a different methodology, then they should be given that opportunity so to do, particularly as a sister government. It is against that background, Mr. Speaker, that we have continued to reflect where Barbados finds its position itself now as the largest single shareholder at 49.4% of LIAT. There is only so much that Barbados can responsibly do at this time, given our current circumstances and our current position on the journey which I referred to just now. Therefore, sir, notwithstanding our absolute commitment to regional air travel, and notwithstanding the fact, sir, and given in fact, the fact that the studies have recommended a different model and restructuring for LIAT, and given the inability of the government of Barbados to do for LIAT in the next 5 to 10 years what the government of Barbados did for LIAT in the last 5 to 10 years, when we moved significantly to assume major shareholder responsibilities, we have taken the determination and decision as a cabinet that it is time for us to step back, while at the same time allowing other governments to continue with their proposal to want to restructure LIAT in the way in which they have determined. I want to make it clear, Mr. Speaker, absolutely clear, that the government of Barbados is not turning its back on LIAT. Indeed, we continue to be committed to LIAT and will, one, maintain a minimum shareholding in LIAT should we reach an agreement with our sister government for them to take over our shareholding with respect to the negotiations. Two, that we will continue to provide a minimum revenue guarantee, or I shouldn't say continue, we will provide a minimum revenue guarantee on any route that is uncommercial, unprofitable, recognizing, however, that the majority of routes that Barbados is involved in is in fact profitable within LIAT. And it is against this background, Mr. Speaker, our commitment continues such that within the last few weeks, the government of Barbados would have sent a further $1 million Barbados to LIAT and would also have satisfied our commitments to the Caribbean Development Bank with respect to the refleeting of LIAT. Against the background, sir, of us taking therefore a step back while retaining a serious commitment to it, we have accepted an offer from a sister Caribbean state, Antigua and Barbuda, we enter into negotiations with them to see whether a deal can be concluded with respect to Antigua and Barbuda taking up our shares in exchange for them taking up our responsibilities as a shareholder within the context of LIAT. This will require negotiations on the part of both countries, and therefore we will be writing Prime Minister Brown to indicate that just as he has established a negotiating team, the government of Barbados will establish a negotiating team that will meet with his negotiating team to settle the terms, if we can, with respect to the conclusion of the transfer of the shareholding. The Honourable Attorney General of Barbados will lead our negotiating team, and it will meet hopefully in the course of the next few weeks to start the discussions. Mr. Speaker, sir, we believe that regional affordable air travel is critical, but we also accept that life is also to be taken how we find it. The government of Barbados wishes the government of Antigua well with respect to being able to pursue an alternative model, recognizing that we cannot play that role that we have played in the course of the last 5 to 10 years, given our priorities and our challenges economically. But we believe that we can continue to play a vital role still as a minimum shareholding government within LIAT, and ensuring that as many routes as possible that LIAT conducts are commercially viable, such that it does not place pressure or burden on the overall finances of the airline. Mr. Speaker, sir, I therefore thank this Honourable Chamber for affording me the opportunity of sharing the position that has been reached by the Cabinet of Barbados with respect to LIAT, and we look forward to successful discussions between our two countries such that we can report properly back to the public and to this Parliament the outcome of those discussions over the course of the next few weeks. I'm obliged to you, sir.
All right, folks. All right. There she goes. Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley. Who is it going to be? Jerry, or is it going to be Beverley?
This, that one of the things that Mia Mottley made very clear in all that she said there is that studies have been done about how it has been suggested that LIAT be taken forward. She mentioned 3 studies. She makes the point very subtly that none of these studies have been taken on board, and that the new approach taken by Antigua is not even going to take on board any of those studies. And to me, that is one of the most powerful points that she makes in that whole thing. So she goes, she says, okay, we are going to, we're not walking away. We're not walking away, we'll still give you support. But the thing about it is that although the Prime Minister says about them being part of the what they call it again? The minimum guarantee arrangement. Barbados will have to pay very little for that because Barbados is a hub. Most flights going into Barbados are going to go in full because it's a hub, and most flights leaving going to leave full. So their minimum guarantee requirements are going to be practically zero.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So put that off the table. What happens? The other thing that I'm saying, we're going to negotiate the shares. My concept of understanding what shares are and what is being said here has left me puzzled. All right? Because if there are shares, they should have a value and it should be easy to dispense. I also heard that in 2003, the shareholding for Barbados fell. So who got the additional shares? It's all of these things that have been happening with LIAT that nobody has explained to us and we can't understand. Because that I do not know of a business model that fits that kind of operation. I really don't know. Okay? No. I think what Barbados wants to get out of it is this. Barbados has the greatest responsibility for CDB loan for 3 of the ATR aircraft. Yeah. And all that Barbados basically want to get out of this to make sure that they get sufficient money to pay off their portion of that debt. Mm-hmm. That's what Mia has been concerned about. Because she has said up front, since October 1st, we are in an IMF program, and therefore our hands are tied. Although she said they gave $1 million recently. Okay?
Since May 1st.
Well, yeah, that's recent, May 1st. So she says that. But the truth of the matter is, what they told me in Grenada is fiscal space, yes. Barbados does not have, alone in the language as I go along, Barbados does not have the fiscal space to accommodate LIAT. But let us say that Antigua is able to purchase Barbados' the majority of the shares from Barbados. We're seeing that, we're selling that as a solution. How is that a solution? Two of us out at sea. We're
not
sinking. Hold on, we're sinking. I have a life jacket, you have a life jacket. We decided we're going to switch life jackets. What does that do? What does that do? Until somebody restructures LIAT so that it is run like a serious entity, nothing is going to change.
Jerry,
Mm-hmm.
you made a point earlier about the value of the shares. What is LIAT worth?
That's the question
today. What Mayor is going to do with Gaston is have a negotiation about a negotiation. Okay? The first negotiation is to negotiate a way to negotiate the sale.
You're a politician.
No. I take that
I hear you. I hear you.
I take that from her language. She has to unload. She has to unload. This is a yoke around the Barbados economy's neck, which it has to unload.
Yeah.
Let's go to the potential buyer. Let's call a rough number. Let's call a crazy number, Jerry. Suppose Barbados they have 49.4 points in the company. Suppose they say they're going to hold on to
10%.
9.49 points and sell Antigua 40 points. Let us suppose those 40 points come up to $40 million. Does Antigua have $40 million to pay for those shares?
I agree.
Let me tell you what I believe. Let me tell you what I believe. I believe a private player, a sponsor, a funder, a backer is behind the Antigua initiative. And this could transform LIAT into something, maybe what Jerry would prefer it to be, a private, either a privately run entity or an entity run like how a privately run entity should be run.
That's what I
don't think Antigua has the money.
Dwyer, just sit back a little bit. We want to see
yes,
that. Sit back a little bit. Attaboy.
Yes.
Good. Okay. That's
right.
No, but Dwyer, when you haven't said that, I find that the Prime Minister of Dominica been batting on several wickets. He wants
Antigua.
Antigua, sorry. He wants the new campus, the 5th campus of the University of the West Indies, for which money has to be expended. In fact, that decision should have been made on the 31st of May. Today's the 6th, we haven't heard anything, and he was prancing up that certain countries judge them and all that kind of foolish stuff. There have been the whole question of the banking situation, all right? We're now hearing the true reason why the Canadian banks are leaving, but that's a story for another discussion. But he has been pressing that they be given the right to buy the banks, all right? So all the stuff that he has been pushing for requires capital. Money. That's right. So I agree with you. Unless there's somebody in the wing, waiting in the wings. But then that brings the question back. If LIAT is supposed to be a company of island shareholders, how does a private entity or individual fit into that?
They will work that out, man.
I know they will work it out.
They have it worked out already.
Are we ready for the working out?
No. We're not only not ready for the working out, but we are going to have to strangle some people. Maybe not literally, but strangle them to get the information out of them.
Maybe literally is right.
Folks, we wait to see what is the next step for LIAT, because one thing we know for sure, just as Dwyer said, Antigua doesn't have the money. And we're not sure if it's Mr. Chowsky or Mr. Larry King that's going to pay for it. But we will see how soon the money comes forward and when the shares are going to be handed over. But in the meantime, we taxpayers continue to burn every time LIAT flies. And there is no end in sight to that right now. We want to go talk about healthcare.
Quickly before you go on that issue, I understand and it has been touted that one of the reasons why, remember, and just give me a couple of seconds to position this correctly.
Hurry up.
That White Oaks, the company that Barbados paid $27 million to start to give them advice in terms of how they restructure their economy, right? Which is a scandal in itself. Said that they have been advising Barbados on the whole LIAT situation. Now, there's been a thing that perhaps Barbados has plans for its own airline. I'll just leave that there for what it's worth.
Yes, there's some speculation as to that.
Yeah, some serious speculation.
I've seen that conversation.
Serious speculation.
More 747 coming into the region.
Me, I get enough cost for that. I keep them out at that.
Well, we are
afraid the 747 Act.
Listen, we don't have much time enough. We're talking about healthcare, and we want to go and listen to the calypso and talk about Dominica election campaign, you know? Talk about who run things and who is top dog. Right, so Grenada has been talking about a national health insurance for maybe the past 3 years. Kennedy, about 3 years now?
No, it's for the last 25 years.
Well, have me excused.
OECS Secretariat did a report on national health insurance in Grenada and gave the report to the government in May of 1996.
Wow. So it has been there for the past 25 years. I stand corrected and I take my correction. Over the past 3 years, the administration, which is now formed by the new National Party, and are telling all of the suspects to go and read up the Constitution, you see, because we have a discussion coming up on political parties and governance. So read up the Constitution properly for when that discussion comes. But for now, the administration which is formed, the administration which now sits, has been pushing this national health insurance. As a matter of fact, Minister Emlyn here had given a date when it's going to be implemented. And we have had subsequent dates when it's going to be implemented. The only thing which in fact happened was we got some money and set up the secretariat, which I believe is staffed, And again, Kennedy can correct me if that is not so. So the Secretariat is set up, even though it was announced that the management of the National Health Insurance would be done by the same people who manage the Social Security. So that was announced, but still we have a Secretariat with different staff. That's another discussion. Again, we want to stick to this whole health insurance and how it's going to be funded and what and who going to be covered. So we asked Kennedy to briefly update us on where this whole national health insurance is right now.
All right, thanks, Beverly. And in June of 2013, the government established a committee to look at national health insurance, and Senator Chester Humphrey was the chairperson and I was the deputy chairperson. From the first meeting, we discussed whether we should focus on national health insurance or whether we should take on the overall responsibility of looking at universal health coverage. The mandate of the committee was to look at NHI, so we did that. When we presented the report to the cabinet in May of 2015, it was said that, listen, even though this is an approach for national health insurance, it should be done within the context of UHC, universal health coverage. Nothing happened from May 2015. In January 2016, I spoke with the Minister of Health and he told me things are happening. In September 2016, the government changed the responsibility from the Minister of Health to Minister Emmeline Pear, and she came with a proposal to implement it by July 2017. I wrote a couple articles in the papers and I was on the media saying, listen, this cannot happen this way because you cannot, and I still maintain, you cannot talk about implementing health financing reform when the quality of care being delivered in our public facilities are so bad, paying the most out of pocket for health care in the Caribbean. And over 50% of total health expenditure in Grenada comes out of people's pocket in terms of user fees. So what the government has done, they eventually realized they can't implement it in July of 2017. So they got some resources from the European Union to come and give some guidance. And basically they told them the same thing. You cannot go ahead in this way. You must look at it in a broader context. However, UE has told me, the colleagues from there have told me that they're doing a job based on what the government asked them to do. So even though they have advised for it to be done within the context of universal health coverage, they are focusing on the national health insurance component, which they're paid to do. So they're going out currently as we speak, having consultations on national health insurance. Interestingly, over the last 3 months, 2-3 months, the National Insurance Scheme had a consultation on Social Security and did not include NHI. So NHI, which is part of NIS, was not included in their consultation. And NHI is now doing a consultation that does not involve the Ministry of Health. So while they're going around talking about NHI, they're saying, well, the Ministry of Health has to improve the services in the district, and the Ministry of Health has to do that. But we are just trying to make sure that we get a pool of funds to pay providers for delivering care. The reality is they have not spoken in detail with the providers. We have just around 100 physicians working in the national health system, of which most of them are working in both the public and private sector. They have not been included in the discussion in a detailed way. The health workers who are working in the community are not involved in an active discussion. They were just told that NHI is being implemented. As of now, they're saying it's implemented in the first quarter of 2020, and people do not know how they're paying for it, what they're getting in what setting. They've given a list of benefits that you would get, but they have not said if you'll get that in the public sector or private sector or both. It's really a mess in the sense that there is no leadership to the process that understands what has to be done, and they're playing more politics than really health. So I am not convinced that they're going to implement anything before they leave office in the next few years, because I'm pretty convinced that this issue is going to be the Achilles heel for this government. And when the people realize that they cannot do it based on what they've been promising, it will be a different picture. So this is enough.
I thought pension and gratuity would be the Achilles heel, but we leave that there. You mentioned a number of stakeholders not involved in the consultation or the consultative process for the NHI. I didn't hear you mention insurance companies, because when you talk about a health insurance, it sounds to me like you need an underwriter.
Well, the thing is, national health insurance is more like what they call social insurance rather than private insurance.
So it's a health fund.
Basically, and the thing is, each country has to make it unique to their realities. So when we're talking about the delivery of care, and we're not including St. George's University in a serious discussion, while we have 100 doctors in our health system, we have over 400 doctors who are teaching as clinical tutors within the university. They are not involved in our health system. Most of them want to volunteer, but they cannot because they are not registered to practice in Grenada. And they're not registered because the process is so cumbersome. Even the Caribbean physicians who are at SGU working, who go through the process of registration, it takes them months to get it. And it's an annual registration. So by the time they get it, it's time for renewal, and then it takes them months again to get renewal. So they frustrate this shit out of you, and as a result, they just say, well, okay, you won't practice. Because the medical council has an unwritten mandate that if these physicians work in our health system, they will lose money. So they are willing to compromise the health of the nation for them to make more money. And this is really crazy.
Let me ask another question, Kennedy, because I'm really trying to get a clear picture of what this NHI is going to look like. So we currently have a national insurance, we call it, that pays benefits, sick leave, maternity leave, pensions, other types of benefits. So are we looking at a health fund that's going to be similarly set up, where it's contributory and people are just paid out benefits rather than a proper insurance?
No, I don't think so. I think the concept of a health insurance, insurance at its simplest form really means you make something whole for whatever it is, so a service, you guarantee that this service will be paid for, basically. Medicare here, it would be the equivalent of Medicare, wouldn't it be, Kennedy? Similar to Medicare in the United States, which is insurance, actually. So if you have Medicare here, you do have insurance. So it will be the equivalent to that. It's just that the government runs Medicare in this case. It's not done by a private institution or underwritten by a private thing.
Well, that is what I want to get clear, because there's a lot of discussion, and politicians do this all the time. They just throw a lot of stuff out there, and it's a whole model, and nothing makes sense. So we're talking about this health insurance, and despite the fact that another date has been given for implementation, which is the first quarter of 2020, there is no clear-cut information out there to say, this is what is being offered and this is how it's going to work. The Minister of Health, time and time again, has talked about a basket of services that will be covered under the National Health Insurance. We don't know what's in that basket. So you don't know if it's gonna contain high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, whatever. We still don't know for sure what is going to be covered in that basket. We don't know how the things outside of the basket are gonna be dealt with, because we do have related illnesses, and sometimes it's kind of hard to draw the line. We don't know how these things are going to be set up. If you're going to implement something in the first quarter of 2020, halfway through 2019, and as a member of the public, a member of the public who pays attention to what is happening and to what the officials say and to official releases and to all of that, I don't have a clear sense of what this NHI is supposed to look like, what it is supposed to cover, and how it is supposed to work for Mary Jane walking into a health center with her baby, seeking some kind of health.
So question here, am I hearing you saying that this is supposed to be launched within the first half of 2020?
First quarter.
First quarter of 2020.
Yeah, that's a new date.
You see,
folks, listen to me.
The reality is that this government is losing sight of the big picture. You know, all the recommendations for universal health coverage and NHI. And the thing is, NHI is an integral part of point 3.8 of the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs 3.0 is on health and 3.8 is on universal health coverage, of which NHI is an integral part. So I am all in favor of a national health insurance program. However, all the recommendations start by saying you need to have comprehensive dialogue on your health system. You need to look at why is it that people are not using the government health services? If we are now charging people for, and they have listed a list of benefits in the benefit package, which includes almost everything offered in Grenada. Primary care services, mental health, lab, x-ray. They basically say everything being offered in Grenada except dialysis is going to be part of the NHI program. But the reality is, you cannot talk about it and focus on the paying when you're not focusing on what is the quality of care being delivered now? How is that going to change? Where will people access care? Will they pay the physician on a fee-for-service basis, or will people have to register with a physician and be paid on a capitation basis? These issues are not being discussed, and it cannot be done rushed in a few months. You know, the whole world is talking universal coverage, and they're saying, talk to your people. Let us discuss a comprehensive approach. What hurts me is that I am teaching this stuff. Today I was doing a lecture on systems thinking and the importance of a systems thinking approach to address health reform. And I'm telling my students, while I'm telling you this in theory, we're not doing it in practice in these islands for reasons that baffles me. Because it is not a money issue. They have money that they're doing consultation, but this government doesn't understand what it means by consultation. They think having an information session to tell you what they're doing is consultation. I grew up in the revolution. When we go and we ask people what they think, what are their problems, what are their issues, and people, and then you fine tune it and you put it together in a package and you develop programs. Our education reform program during the revolution, Dr. Didicus Jules gave a lecture on it last week at the conference in Grenada. It was based on people's participation in a genuine way. And I'm convinced that this government will not be able to implement it, and they have to wait until they have proper dialogue with the people.
I hear all of that, but let us start. And I don't like the approach that it's not a money issue. They have already determined $181 million is needed. Where did that figure come from? Kennedy? It's frozen, I suspect. But the minister said...
The health economics unit did some studies. And they said, okay, based on this package of services you want to give, we have 100,000 people. If X% of the people use the services and they come up with a formula where they come up with this 100 million. They're saying right now, based on government expenditure, about just under 80 million, based on the private sector insurance, about 10-15% of the population has private health insurance. Based on what people are spending out of pocket, they estimate that to be about 50% of overall expenditure. They've come up with their figures. But my argument is, you cannot just look at the cost of services and use that as your figure without saying, how are we going to use the human resources available to us at SGU so that the dollars we have to get to do certain things can come through the provision of services. So I am convinced that unless you have proper dialogue on how our health systems function, we do not need as much money as we think we do. I believe that if we get the people to contribute and be involved, people's resources.
So you're asking for SGU to make a contribution to the system? Is that what you're looking for? That what they put into it becomes part of their social corporate responsibility.
Yeah, and the contribution doesn't necessarily means give me cash. We have 15,000 graduates who are all over the world. If we tap into them, we have Grenadians who are graduates of SGU who cannot work in Grenada because the government tell them they don't have any vacancy. I believe that we can harness, and you see, because I have been down at SGU for 20 plus years, I know the system. I know how the Alumni Association works. I know how the university can contribute. We have visiting professors who come down to SGU for a week, and they cannot even give a lecture publicly because, you know, it's the connection with the Ministry of Health is not there. So I am convinced that if we start a dialogue, my Department of Public Health, for example, we wrote to the Ministry of Health and we said, we want to collaborate with you to do community health assessments. We started in a few communities and it was like pulling teeth to get the support of the Ministry of Health. Eventually that program fell through. So I am convinced that we can use the technical resources of St. George's University to do a lot of planning. We don't do any planning. We don't understand, we haven't done assessments of what goes on really. We hope for the best. And this is not the approach where we need to be. We're talking about evidence-based decision-making. We don't gather evidence. Look at, you know, when we look at our data for diabetes, hypertension, obesity, everything is going up. Every year for the last 25, 30 years, it's on a rise, and we are not doing anything differently. So I am saying that we need to harness the resource of our people to discuss what health really means. And when we understand that approach, that mentality of prevention, and we put systems in place to provide quality care for poor people in the community, we get our nurses to contribute. We have nurses about to leave Grenada now to go to the 8 states in England, and the government is not even concerned about it.
Well, Kennedy, let me ask you another question. This committee, which you said Senator Humphrey chaired and you were deputy, a lot of things that you're talking about now that's lacking in the planning leads me to ask, what was that committee's responsibility and what did you guys do?
Okay, it was about 12 of us who sat down in a room once a month without any connection with the real world, with the people out there. And even though we made, I personally, and I have told them, it's interesting that I have all of it documented. They were not interested in dialogue with the people. So we pulled together a recommendation, which was basically done by a few persons, you know, writing what they think should be done rather than understanding what needs to be done. Because the process, go through a process of involving people to contribute to this program. This is what's going to happen. And only over time we will see that they cannot implement a national health insurance program, and gradually the dialogue will start.
I just know this much, right? That these islands are beginning very late in the cycle in this whole business of a national health program. What are some of the realities? Practically every single one of these countries are in deficit financing the economy. Like it or not, that's the reality. If you just look at what is happening to pensions, right? you would also recognize that even at that level, we have failed. I see Grenada has published all of the private health insurances, and I really applaud Grenada for that, because I don't know any other country that has put out that kind of information. But if you go and ask how many of these pension funds, private or not, are really, really properly up to date, it might shock you. Now, into all of that mix, we are wanting to bring in national health service, scheme, insurance, whatever you call it. The difference between health is that health is going to be more of a spending thing, because you have to spend money. For example, the national insurance is a collection of and a percentage paid out. But once it comes to health, the majority of the activity is going to be an expenditure.
So, Brother Jerry, I respect you highly, and I've never really had a dialogue with you, but what you're saying there, health is not about a money issue. Health is a people issue, and the way in which we approach it has to start by saying, okay, health is about, yes, so when you focus on, yes, health is about a money thing, yes, health has a lot to do about money, but if you take an approach that is people-centered, there are certain recommendations that say, okay, every category of your population needs special attention. So what are we doing to the under 5 population, the primary school, the secondary school, the young adolescents, the elderly? How are we approaching the? So once you start thinking of people, you begin to start.
Let's single step this through, Candy. Let's single step this through, right? So let us assume that we say, fine, we're going to give a focus to the under 5, right? And we work out that the needs of the under 5s are getting vaccinated, having proper playing area, maybe the preschooling, right, daycare. Let us assume that we have come to that conclusion. What's the next step?
We then have to make sure that we put the resources there
but that's the point. You have to get the money.
You can't discuss
well,
resources
are not always money, though, Jerry. Resources are not always money.
I don't care what you tell me. Resources come down at the end of the day.
But Brother Jerry, we are
already... Listen, wait, let me say something here. We like to say that resources is not all about money. Resources is money.
Is money.
If I come to you and volunteer, listen. No, let me finish. If I come to you and volunteer my time to do some work, that is money. It's costing me. It is costing me. If I am a doctor, I'm a communications consultant, I am a nurse, I am whoever I am in the community, and I have a skill that I can share, and I come and I volunteer, it's costing me. I have to pay a bus to come, or I have to put gas in my car to come. I am using my resources. So at the end of the day, it can be quantified and a dollar value can be put to it. And you can look at your books and say, this is how much money we do not have to spend because other people choose to give it to us. Resources is about money, and it doesn't care what it is. If I come to you and I give you a cup and say, okay, you can have this cup to help in your program, I bought this cup. It costs money.
I disagree.
You saving money?
Okay, but let's say the other side. Let's say the other side.
And I think that thought process is what has us exactly where we are.
Thank you, Artie.
If we go back to first principles about health, there's a friend of mine, he's a medical doctor, he was a vascular surgeon, just died. He used to remind us, your health is your wealth, which means you have to stop thinking of the expenditure and think of the investment you need to make in your health. That takes it out of the control of the politician, because the politicians like to spend money that they did not earn. So, to change the paradigm about healthcare, about agriculture, about housing, and take it out of the greedy hands of the politician, we have to think of all those things as an investment that we are making in our own welfare, our own well-being. And all that means, what it does is that it says, okay, as you were just talking about, if daycare, that's an investment, not in the health ministry, it's an investment in the education ministry, but it's an investment in the health, which is the wealth of the nation. And our intellectual property is our most important and vital resource. It's the most valuable thing about ourselves, and it is because we have been denigrating it and devaluing it. We do not value the time that a mother spends nurturing her child. We do not value any of the productive investments in health in our society that we give on a daily basis. You know, the nursing, the grandmother's time. And so we don't understand the need to make it possible for the extended family to remain intact in our communities, so that we end up losing the healthcare nurturing component of the grandparents and of the extended family. And then we end up having to find money to pay for it, to pay for daycare, which used to be supplied by the community by and large. And once we have to get money, we fall right into the laps of these greedy politicians who have annual budgets that they use to coerce and keep people poor, so that it can come back to them.
Hold on, Jerry.
They put a dollar value on everything I've said, but it's what I'm asking you to focus on is not the dollar, but the item.
It's not the dollar. What I want to understand is the practical implication.
The practical implication, Jerry, is very simple, and it is so simple it's laughable, because we keep missing it. How do you practically get communities in the Caribbean to once again invest in the wellness of the children of the Caribbean?
All right, could I just ask a little?
It's not about spending money. It is about organizing. It is about spending time with the grannies and the extended families and saying, you know, Granny, what you did to raise me, we want you to help do to raise my children.
All right, could I just
show me how to do it?
Ati, thank you. I just want to get two comments in here. First of all, I want to hear from Margaret and I want to hear from Dwyer. You guys have been sitting there very quietly, just soaking this all up. Ladies first, go Mags.
Oh no! I'm with Afi on that one. I think because in the beginning I had said it's not all about money when in things. So I'm with Afi on that. I mean I get where Bev is coming from about putting a value on it, but you can't. You know, there are some things you just can't reduce it to money, because it's just one of those things that you just can't reduce to money. And I think Afi made the point clearly about thinking of it as an investment more so than an expenditure.
Let me say something.
Hold on. Bev, just a minute. Look, Dwyer.
Yes, sir.
Let's hear your take on this, and then Catherine.
Well, I don't want to disappoint anybody, but it must be built on principles. There must be a philosophy for the whole thing. And the philosophy is the wellness and the health of the people. Because if the people are well and healthy, eating better, living better, have a more healthy and productive lifestyle, then of course, it's better socially and economically. But once you've built your philosophical platform and you're putting programs in place, you have to find money. So it's both. It's both.
But that's the point I'm making.
It's both. The thing is, you have to determine the appropriate philosophical foundation to launch not just a national healthcare program, but your health system generally. And it must be very intricately interwoven with your education and your social development systems. And remember, the whole 9 yards. The whole 9 yards. It must be all woven together. And when you've done that and you've had, not like what Kennedy is saying, a group of big brains sitting in a room once a month, not consulting with the grannies of the community, according to Affy, or the fisherman down in St. Joseph, or down in Beverley, or wherever the case may be. Have conversations with the people. Get a sense of where you are and what you need to do and where you need to be. And then put the brains in place to set up the administrative and operational structures to make the program work. We are in the process of doing that in St. Kitts and Nevis right now. This government that is in office promised to do so when they were campaigning for the 2015 election. They are at a very advanced stage. They've presented a green paper. The actuarial report has been put in place. And so a lot of intellectual agitation is taking place in the country now. There have been a number of public consultations. So just to summarize, it's both. It really is both. You must have the philosophical platform and you must have the money.
Catherine?
What I was thinking, you see the NHS, our health system is a basic need in the country, like education, health, agriculture. And I think that should start as the foundation. But with the NHS system that we have in place, remember, where money is concerned, it's not a profit making. We don't get any profit from it.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. Is it? The profit is not money. It's not money.
Profit is not only counted in dollars. There is social profit as well, which is even more substantive than financial profit.
Right, that's what I'm thinking about. So the basic need there, when you set your basic infrastructure, this is where the profit comes from. But the beginning, it don't start with money. It starts with the ideology, as Dwight was saying. That's ideology function, that mindset of where we go is something to fit our own individual.
Okay, let's help some of the parents who and let's get this right, because I like things single step. It's part of my training, right? So let's say that we have parents who they have to go to work later than normal, but they have children at the preschool. So we have to get some people to take care of these children because preschool is finished at, well, let's say 3 o'clock, right? But these parents are not going to be available until 6 o'clock. So you have to find somebody to be able to take care of these children until their parents who got a job after 4 o'clock for the 2 hours, let's say, to take care of these children.
Somebody who is qualified to do so.
Exactly.
Not just somebody
who's qualified to do so.
Not just somebody.
You got these resources. You got the resources there ready.
What does resource need in that regard?
So I have a suggestion. I mean, there's a spirit of volunteerism that we probably need to encourage. And here is a demographic of your population. Now, your retirement age in Grenada is what, 60? You have a lot of people in Grenada,
Going to 65.
Right, but let's say right now it's 60,
but they're
right?
planning to increase it.
Right, but you do have a lot of 60-year-olds who, the minute time they've been retired, people pretty much put them out to pasture and they figure that they're done. No, these people can still be used. Make them feel useful.
What are they getting in return? What are they getting in return?
Jerry, there are some things again.
No. Listen to me.
No, seriously. No, I hear you, but there are some things that we said. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you can ask them to volunteer, and you know something. There's a lot of things that we could say about the United States, right? But there's a lot of things that are good about it, and one of those things are volunteers. And I'm going to tell you something. In hospitals here, volunteers are a big deal. A lot of people who provide a lot of services at the hospitals are volunteers. And they actively encourage them. And we need to do that too. And we could pretty much do the same thing.
But that has to start very early. That don't just start there.
Jerry, in 1971-72, there was a lady who was in charge of building up our primary healthcare system in Dominica. You know the lady very well. She is now the head of PAHO.
Carissa.
Yeah.
Dr. Carissa Etienne.
Yeah.
She and a team of community health volunteers created a primary healthcare system in Dominica on which there's a lot of data. And Kennedy was talking about evidence-based decision making. Here's some of your evidence. It became the model of primary healthcare, not just in the Caribbean, but in many parts of the world. And in many universities, when they taught primary healthcare, that is the model they use. All right? Okay. It was dismantled because we then had a set of thinkers in healthcare who came and thought that health coverage meant it's almost as if they meant how many people could you fit in a hospital? And the bigger the hospital, the better the healthcare. The more numerous the clinics, the better the healthcare. The exact opposite is what we had already demonstrated is true. Our healthcare budget at that time was a minuscule fraction of what it was, and we had better health indicators in the non-communicables as well as in the communicables. And I'm suggesting to us, and I would suggest to Kennedy, one of the mistakes we keep making in the Caribbean is that we all keep reinventing the wheel when we have an assignment because somebody is paying us to do that. That's the money. The money keeps us from looking at what have we done that worked. It keeps people like Kennedy. You should have spent a year here in Dominica visiting with the primary healthcare people that are still here.
But you know something, but
adopting the model to your conditions. And kids need to do that because there's nothing you can do that will be better than what we have done.
My brother, let me make a little correction in your timeline. The Dominica experience was in the 1980s rather than the 1970s because it was during the Grenada Revolution when we took on primary health care and developed the model. I remember a team from Dominica coming down to Grenada to participate in the program to see how they should implement theirs. And that included Sister Carissa. I worked with Carissa in the 80s.
We had before that,
because it was
Kennedy, here's the integrated approach to planning. Before primary health care was possible, we had the best system of local government.
I was coming to that. I was coming exactly to that to say that's what made it work.
Of that milieu.
I was waiting to say that.
Volunteers who looked after the community. So they created the substrate, the seedbed in which primary healthcare was able to take root.
I was coming to say that's the difference in Dominica. Dominica still has a very healthy local government structure.
But here's my point,
These other
Jerry.
countries don't.
Why do we keep trying to reinvent the wheel? Why are we not behaving as if we know each other?
No, I agree with you. I'm not I agree with you. But I was sitting here waiting to say to you, Ati, the reason why this thing works so well in Dominica is because of Dominica's local government setup. What has happened in most of these islands that has had...
Before local government, we had something else that allowed local government to succeed. And you know what it was? It was the slaves that had escaped from the plantation and hooked up with the Kalinago brothers and sisters to defeat the plantation system. They created a system of working together called Kudme, lending a hand.
Yes.
And the real spiritual legacy of integrated development comes from that.
We are one at that. I think we are absolutely on one at that. My problem is that we have a society that has gone away from much of that, right? And that is, if we really need to come back to this whole thing, and that is why I asked the question, do I put it, about a set of little children who, to help these parents and to ensure that these children are taken care of, they have to be collected at 6 o'clock. That's why I freaked out the way I did. I did like that on purpose. Now, Margaret has put on the table the question of volunteerism. Great idea. The trouble with volunteerism is that you have to have a stock of volunteers that you know and somebody is going to coordinate to make sure, because children you're dealing with here. You can't have a gap when somebody doesn't turn up to look after these children, okay?
Yeah, so, Jerry, what I was thinking, just to add what you were saying, with the preschool and everything like that, I think we got to add health with social care. So that's what we're bringing in, is social care. This kind of a link together. So that's the mindset. You got the social needs and the health needs. So where your mindset is the social care. So we don't have to link that together. The mindset, health and social care. So the community with the nurseries and the preschools and things like that, that is the social aspect of health. That's where you can link together.
No, I am with you.
No, Catherine, you're too logical. In Grenada, we have health and social care. Yes, in Grenada, the Ministry of Health and International Business. No, Health and International Business is a ministry. And they work independently of education and social services. So it's not a laughing matter. It's a fact. You know?
But we have to laugh.
It starts
with Kennedy.
Mindset. It starts with a mindset, with philosophy.
Yeah. So we got to link this thing together, but we just have it this one dimension, and we fight with it. This one dimension way, and we can't get it together. But it's something missing the link there.
I would say this though: whatever the approach is when it comes to this matter of healthcare, it's going to be one of our bugbears. And especially with the growing incidences of non-communicable diseases, which really and truly, when you think about it, if that was focused and dealt with better, we wouldn't get to the care where we need curative care and all the rest of it. But let's face it, how much of what is presented today as healthcare really deals with that preventative aspect, really deals with that question of dealing with that.
No, I was just going to say, but it goes back to what we were speaking about earlier when you talked about primary health care, because that's exactly the focus of primary health care, is prevention.
But this is not part, I could tell you this for a fact, because I look and I've had reason to be involved in some of the health. That's minor in most of these health ministries. You know what is health in most of these islands? But you all said it, a building, a clinic, a hospital. That is what the money is thrown behind and seen as healthcare.
But you know why, Jerry? It's because some politician wants to be able to point it and say, vote for me, I built that.
That's correct.
But while they're doing that, the people are getting more sick and they're more unhealthy. He will not point to the people and say, vote for me because look at the health indicators. When we came in 5 years ago, they were here. 5 years later, look at the chronic diabetes, hypertension, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. No. Which politician you ever hear in our region using those indicators as a campaign basis? They can't. They won't. They need poor people. They need unhealthy people in order to be able to hand them off money at election time, etc., etc. They need people to be poor. That's the model. If we want to change our approach and become less dependent on the one resource that we don't appear to have a lot of or don't appear to know how to manage, which is money, we better reverse the model and get back to first principles where our progress and our health and our wealth depends more and more on what we put into the thing rather than what some politician goes to Brussels and negotiates and come and say, vote for me because I was able to raise $5 million. What about all the Petro-Carib money that they got? Do you ever hear them talking about it? It's now 15 years. 15 years. If that Petro-Carib money had been spent on health, education, and roads, we wouldn't have a problem today. Where is the money? Where is the petrochemical?
Look at Haiti. Haiti's asking the question.
So let's get away from that. Let's get away from that. They want money. Let them thief the money. We go cut their necks off at the right time. But there are resources we can go after. Our community has knowledge, has expertise, has resources. Today I had a meeting with a guy who has so many books and so much knowledge about natural plants and healing and wellness, and has healed so many people. My goodness, that's our wealth. Yeah. And interestingly, it's a wealth that continues to earn because the people in the north, they want wellness, and they will pay to come and get well.
We have to come to a halt on this topic. We have one more issue to deal with, and that is
I think Kennedy wanted to make a point.
I'll just conclude by saying it's not because we lack the direction or the information. Even at this World Health Assembly last month, they passed 3 resolutions on universal health coverage, saying focus on primary health care and get back to the community. Look at community health workers to focus on wellness rather than sickness. And they're planning a meeting in Washington in September to look at universal health coverage. The minister came back and he said nothing about that. They're doing nothing about it. So it's really a philosophy, because unfortunately we have a government in Grenada that won the election last year without any issues being discussed. They focused on one issue, leadership, and they pung Nazimburg to a pulp and they won 15 seats. So now they see that as a mandate to do what they want. So our approach, because as you might be aware, I'm involved with the NDC now and helping to the rebuild of the party. And we are going to take a human-centered approach that we're going to be talking about these health issues and in some detail. So we're not going to just talk pie in the sky, because the reality is I've been in these trenches for 25 years looking at these issues in detail. And I've decided that I'm no longer staying quiet. And I appreciate the opportunity tonight to share some of the things with you. But this is a dialogue that has to go on until we get it right, not just in Grenada, but throughout the Caribbean.
Thanks, Kennedy. Thanks. But don't go anywhere now. You ain't going nowhere. Bev, you should take a break, then a final break, and then come back and wrap it up.
No, we can't take a break because George is not there, so we just have to
that's true,
right into the discussion. Actually, we've been seeing some sound bites coming out of Dominica as the campaigning over there gets underway, I would say. The current Prime Minister, who leads his political party, seems to be very busy, and he's making a lot of statements. And one of the things he has talked about is healthcare. And his most famous statement to date is that, well, he has insurance, he can fly out his children if they get sick. You know,
he did.
What about all of you?
But, Margaret, you would not believe that the man said that on a political platform.
Mm-hmm.
I just find it shocking.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get a feel from your athlete. You know, I heard there was a response to it, at least from one woman who said, well, she wants to fly out her children too. You know, she took offense to the statement, and she should.
Yeah.
And as I would, for the political leader of a party / prime minister to say, well, I can fly out my children, what about all of you? You know? And
basically said to them, I am rich.
And in essence, telling the people, vote for me so I can continue to live my lifestyle and you continue to live yours. After what's going on the ground in Dominica?
Well, I mean, if you want to know what's going to be happening in Grenada and St. Vincent and St. Lucia in a couple of years' time, watch what's going on in Dominica today.
Absolutely right.
We are playing out the script. Essentially, the government set aside from the CVI funds $71.2 million for its political campaign. And part of that campaign is to hand things out to people: refrigerators, stoves, big flat screen TVs, etc., the Ministry of Finance has hundreds of duty-free forms pre-signed for cars. So you want a duty-free car? Just go and say you're going to vote for them. You'll get a duty-free car. Okay, and so on. But what they're realizing is that they are running out of time, and interestingly, they're running out of money because they want to hold a portion of that $71 million for themselves, of course. So they don't want to give it out all to the people. And people are becoming insistent. They say, where's mine?
I think they used 71. What was the population of Dominica?
Right now, about 62.
And what the 71? You realize if you put 60, okay, let's call it 70.
A million per capita, yeah.
$1 million per person?
Yeah.
For campaign?
Yeah.
For real?
Well, I mean, let me and that's what they've announced, right? But remember, in the last 4 years of 2018, they brought in $1.4 billion ET from CBI. So
and where is that in the economy? How is that reflected in the economy?
In what economy?
It would be.
It's not. No banks here. The only bank that is still accepting CBI money is the National Bank.
National Bank. And the day somebody pulls the plug on that, you'll know who controls it.
Who selects the board? Who selects the chairman, the managing director? The same finance minister who is the same prime minister. So there's a reinforcement of the pyramid approach to governance. But they are realizing that if all their own supporters even come to them for something, it's going to be total chaos. All right? So the deputy leader was heard to say last Sunday at a rally, look, y'all are coming here. I want to tell you, just wait, be patient. You will get your fridge. Be patient. You will get your stove. Be patient. You will get your TV.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I'm very serious. Absolutely. You know, I didn't send that one to Beverley because I have to ease those things into the pipeline. Statement about healthcare is really what really reveals a growing level of desperation on their part. They thought money could do it for them. Money cannot do it. So basically, it's the shock and awe. You remember shock and awe in the Iraqi war?
Oh, yes.
We have a version of shock and awe here. Right? So he stands up and he says, healthcare is very important to me. I have health insurance. If my children get sick, and by the way, footnote, his children have all been born in the United States of America. So they are all US citizens. So back to text. So he says, if my children get sick, I can fly them out. And then he says, what about you? What about us? What about you? What about you? He's basically saying to his people, and this is at a political rally of his party, I have taken care of myself.
That's right. I am rich, you're poor.
What about you? And at the same, and in the next breath, he's saying, I want 5 more years. So now, you know, some people are suggesting Trump needs an intervention, meaning he needs attention to his cranium. We are suggesting our prime minister is way past the point of intervention. You know, that. Because he went on at the same meeting to castigate the Public Service Union for taking objection to his meeting privately with workers in the public service who are not appointed, whom he has the power to authorize the appointment for, but some of them are acting for 10 years, 12 years, and so forth. So he meets with them and promises them things as well, and promises them finally to make them appointed. He has no authority under the Constitution or the law to do that, by the way. And then he goes on to say, tell the General Secretary of the Public Service Union, I run things in this country. And that is a sitting prime minister.
Yep.
Saying that in a constitutional democracy, in a republic, format of government, with a parliament, with a cabinet, with a sitting opposition, with a president, with a court, all of which have some role to play in the governance of the country. He basically has just publicly dismissed all components of the government system except himself. So it's not a monarchy. You can find a word to describe it, okay? But that's our reality, and that's where Keith is going. That's where Ralph is going. They're turning these little islands into little monarchies, little kingdoms, where they rule here.
Yep.
Not Ja. So I hate to be the bearer of good news, but maybe that's what it's going to take to wake us up.
That's true.
Why is it then that the general feeling that I'm getting out of Dominica is that he's going to win a landslide?
He's going to?
Win a landslide.
He's going to win a what?
Landslide.
Well, because you're listening to their propaganda. You're not here. Come here. Come on the ground.
No, I want to hear the result at the end of the election, and I want to know whether you said what is really going on, or whether people just go in with the freeness and they go in with the thing that, listen, I get it now, so I'll give you another 5 years so I could get a little more personally.
But if after having given out already millions of dollars worth of goodies, the Deputy Prime Minister can take umbrage at this little fact, that people went to the rally on Sunday wearing all different colors of clothing, white shirts, yellow shirts, other shirts, blue shirts, red shirts. He took umbrage. He said, all you forget that the color of the party is red? What are you doing here with all these funny colors?
That's nice.
That is not a confident person.
That's nice.
As you say, Dwyer, you're a politician. I'm not. And
you mean you stop?
Strange things happen. Strange things happen.
Artie, I have a question for you. Somebody here is suggesting that the voters list in Dominica is bloated. 72,000 people on that list.
That's right.
With a population of 62,000?
That's right.
Is that really correct?
No. And this administration has been refusing to take the names of dead people off the list and to take the names of people who've been out of the country for more than 5 years, which according to the law, the names have to be removed and they have to re-register. That's why you have a bloated list. And the plan is, and maybe that's what Dwyer is hearing, the plan is to have people vote in the name of dead people. To vote in the name of dead people. Don't forget, this government spent a lot of money, $30 million on the previous election in 2014. They won the election by 617 votes after having brought in 6,500 voters from the United States and Canada. They won only by 617 votes in 5 constituencies. And in one
that's
of those
30 million divided by 600?
There you go.
That's what it is.
There you go. So that's the formula we're working with. The point is, the rest of the region seems not to realize that there's a new script, there's a new democracy script. And we go on about our business blithely, they go to meetings, people, CARICOM says nothing, the other one says nothing. OAS said, you have a bloated list, you need to clean it up. Commonwealth said, you have a bloated list, you need to clean it up. It's not done. They are refusing. But Dominica is walking, you know, like those razors we use as men sometimes, which has 2 or 3 blades in it. Dominica is walking on 3 blades. If you slip from one, you will get cut by the other, or by the 3rd blade. And I believe the Caribbean is not paying attention, and we're all getting ready to be surprised. That Dominica, that nice little country, all these nice people, how they could behave that way, how they could take this one ear out and that one nose out, and we want to be surprised. So be surprised, because that's where we're headed. We have just got a new set of military-grade equipment from China. Which has gone to the police. The police no longer...
Armored cars too? I was saying that.
Who?
Are they armored cars too?
They are armored cars.
What do you need armored cars in Dominica?
Well, if you know that what you're doing is foolishness and that the people are not taking it, we'll see. But we still had the best primary health care. We still had the best local government system. We still have a lot of strengths that are worth a hell of a lot more money even than the Petro-Caribbean mosques. It's just that we haven't been accounting for the value of those resources that we have created. And so we keep depending on a resource that somebody else has control over and they use to joke us around. Got to turn that around, people. We really have to. Otherwise, this will not be a nice Caribbean. Trust me. Trust me.
4 minutes to show down, to show time, to close time. 4 minutes. Bev?
Bev.
Let me unmute myself. Yes, George is going to tell me he's going to do something here that's going to make us run a few minutes over time.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. Why don't you provide an introduction?
All right. I would say in tandem with this discussion we have going on, with the leaders of political parties using people to keep them in the positions that they are in, we have a calypsonian in St. Vincent who goes by the stage name of Patches, who has a calypso out, and it's called Yaad Bwoy. And that calypso matches so well with some images from Dominica that when the two go together, I tell you, it's real Caribbean unity. George is going to show it to you.
I freed 1,000 slaves, and I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew that they were slaves. That's Harriet Tubman. Up, you mighty race, and accomplish what you will. Marcus, Mosiah, Garvey. Come at me. One of the things that does get me vexed is to hear Negroes quoting from Malcolm X. You know they don't have a blinking clue. They don't care what black people are going through. They will protect massa with their life. Give them the young daughter and the wife. You know they don't have no shame at all. They were born to lick boots and born to crawl. Look one day, you're Yaad Bwoy, house Negro, massa toy. But watch him now, Jimbo, Uncle Tom. Well, I guess that's the way they were born. Some of them talking reparation, but their minds are still on that plantation. They'll forever be just house slaves till they are dead and done in the grave. I see one day, you're Yaad Bwoy, Master Troy. Garvey and Mandela, they would quote, using these great men to get some vote, working to keep the massa in charge. Most of them stunting, living large. Massa don't have to tell them a thing. They will oppress me to please the king. Well, there's a shame and a damn disgrace. A bunch of traitors to their own race. Look one day, you're Yaad Bwoy, house Negro, Master Toy. But watch him now, Jimbo, Uncle Tom. I guess that's the way they were born. Some of them dress up in dashiki, trying their best to mama guide. But they'll forever be just house slaves till they are dead and down in the grave. I see one day you're Yaad Bwoy, no name, no warrant, Master Boy. Call a name and I go whistle. Martin Luther King will turn in his grave to see the behavior of these house slaves. Harriet Tubman and Chatouillet will be ashamed if they come down here. Cause when a brother man try to rise, they will sabotage him, wreck his enterprise. While massa working in the background, these Negroes will fight hard to keep you down. Watch one day, you're Yaad Bwoy, House Negro, Master Toy. Watch him there, your Jimbo. Uncle Tom, that's the way they were born. Some of them talking black history while they're working with Master to oppress me. They will forever be just house slaves till they are dead and down in the grave. I see one day your Yaad Bwoy, Master Toy. 500 years Tom still on we case, working like hell to keep down the race. No matter how hard some of we try, they say we must suffer and we must die. Some in fancy suits, some in gunslingers, angels are death master messengers. But I know one day they gotta go. Tell them I go jam them with calypso, jam with me. Yaad Bwoy, House Negro, Master Tom. Now watch him now, you Jimbo, Uncle Tom. But that is the way they were born. Some of them went to university, so they think they are smarter than you and me. But they'll forever be just house slaves till they are dead and down in the grave. See one day your Yaad Bwoy, Master Toy. Master will give them fancy degree, make them put stool yardies and lackey. The Negroes don't have no black consciousness. They are happy and they to be in this mess. Europeans and Asians control this world. They treat me like toys, little boys and girls. The Negroes are satisfied with the state, and when you talk, they say how you preach and hate. Watch them now, Yaad Bwoy, House Negro, Master Tom. But watch them now, you Jimbo, Uncle Tom. But that is the way they were born. Some of them brainwash and colonize, so they have to believe all our master lies. But they'll forever be just house slaves till they are dead and down in the grave. I see one day your Yaad Bwoy, Master Toy, Yaad Bwoy, House Negro, Master Tom. But watch him now, you Jimbo, Uncle Tom. But that is the way they were born. Some of them brainwash and colonize, so they have to believe all our master lies. But they'll forever be just house slaves till they are dead and down in the grave. I see one day your Yaad Bwoy, Master Toy.
Yeah, I think we're back.
Okay, we are back. And we are back to, you want to comment on the song, Bob? Or the song does that itself?
I think it does itself.
I think the song speaks for itself. When I saw it, I say as many of our Caribbean people should look at it, because we are all becoming toys for those top dogs, and we need to just wake up and come out from under this cloud and take the majority need to take back the country from the minority. That is what needs to happen.
And on that note, let's thank George for giving us a couple minutes overtime on this edition of Mek We Chat. Let's thank Kennedy for being our special guest this evening. And I'm sure that we will say to you, feel free. Because once you get inside, you get baptized inside, it's difficult, Ask Dwyer.
Yeah, you're right.
George, thanks once again for accommodating us. And to everybody, good evening. To all those who are not listening. Hey, yeah, George.
Jerry, could I have just one little shot before I
Sure,
go?
man.
Dwyer. Yes, sir.
Look at me.
Yes, sir. Look, when my head is buried, it is buried for a reason,
Don't go any further, Dwyer, please.
No, and I won't. Don't
go any further. I mean, you're a bushman.
Afi is right on point.
George,
Brother Afi, I will always love you.
Responsibility for this, okay?
What was that, Jerry? What was that, Jerry?
That was planned.
Yeah, it sounds so.
What was that you said, Jerry?
And for those of you,
I said, George, you take full responsibility for what happened now. Your extra time has caused this.
For those of you who haven't read it, the article on health on NDC Heartbeat is on George's site. Look at the NDC's perspective on health this week.
Thank you, sir.
And we tried to put it, so take a read.
All right, the website, by the way.
We want to look at the NDC too, so you don't come nice up about them. them
That is the image run.
All right.
Thanks again, everybody.
All the best.
All suspects.
Good night.
Take care.
Take care.
Happy take care, brother.
Okay, man.
One love. One.